Excited about a great week here, and one thing that is great about being at Ohio State is you get a chance to be around the best fans in the land, and I know that this week is going to be, a huge opportunity for us to show a nation, what the best damn fans in the land look like. And so, talked about it on the radio show, and this is going to be that type of game where, we got to be loud on third down every time they have the ball, and certainly the atmosphere is going to be tremendous. So, looking forward to this week of prep and challenging our guys this week to have the best week of preparation they've had all season, and then get after it on Saturday.
All right, great. Thanks, Coach. We'll open the floor up for questions. Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, when you guys win the toss, are you ever tempted to take the ball first? Let's take weather out of it. Weather's neutral. Are you ever tempted to take the ball first and get some momentum?
Yeah.
Most coaches decide to kick off, but are you ever tempted to take the ball first?
Yeah. And, we try to make that decision based on the game and what's going on, but we just decided to defer last week, which allows you an opportunity to get the ball in the second half and do some good work in the middle eight. So, you think about those things going in, but we decided to defer last week. And, it's fine when you get a 3 and out. It's not fine when, you're not getting them off the field on third down and, they're kind of controlling the first quarter. So it kind of led to a slow start, but it really wasn't so much the decision as it was the execution.
At tight end, how do you feel about your tight end room overall, and how close is Will to coming back?
Yeah, he's gonna get out there and practice this week. We'll see how he does, and we're hoping to have him available for Saturday. And the tight end room is growing, and we're getting more and more guys out there, which is good for our team.
Over to the right, Adam King, WBNS.
Kind of a sidebar, but did you see the play on Jeremiah there in the Northwestern game, and did you guys turn that into the Big Ten?
Yeah, we did. Well, we turned it in, and I think we're waiting to hear back.
Is he doing okay?
Yeah. Yep. Good to go.
And then you guys the playoff starts early, almost for you. Everything is championship from here on out. How do you mentally prepare for that, knowing it could be, you hope, 6 straight games of tough competition?
Yeah, you can't look at it that way. We're going to approach every game the same way, and it's going to come down to our leaders leading the way and using the experience that they've had late in the season the last few years. And I think that's one of the things about this team is that these guys have been through multiple seasons together, and so it's easy to lose focus when you're young on what's going on across the country, or what's going on in the future, what's going on in the past. The most important thing is focusing on what's going on right now, and we got a top 5 matchup right here at home, and we got everything on the line, opportunity to go to Indy, reach our goals. So, we'll talk about that in the team meeting today, but I know our guys are focused. Started on Sunday night, had a great Sunday. Those guys, we're getting some extra work in here on film yesterday, and so, we have a great week of practice, though.
Jeremy Birmingham, the podcast.
Ryan, I know last week there was a lot of discussion about the noon games and how they've been perceived around the Big Ten or around Ohio State, but from a recruiting specific standpoint, is there any frustration that it's preventing you guys from maybe getting full accounting what you want to do as a recruiting operation, or what it's costing you from guys visiting, et cetera?
Well, the great news is there's going to be a great environment on Saturday, and for our recruits to be able to come in and see that is a huge advantage for us in recruiting. Just to see the rewards of the work that you put in and the fan support and what game day atmosphere is like, and where. For those who are done with their high school year, it's a lot easier for them to come in for a noon game. For those who are a little bit further away, who are still in the playoffs, it's a little bit more difficult for them to get here. So, we manage it the best we can, and we get great coverage on TV. These guys can watch it on TV, who are a little bit further away. So, I think we'll have a great crowd here. I think we got a bunch of recruits coming in. So, we'll manage it. We don't have anything to do with the times of the games. We just make it work, and those who will be here will really enjoy it.
In the world that we're in now, how much harder is the evaluation of assistants when it comes to recruiting? Because there are times when things happen that may be outside of their control.
Yeah.
How are you judging that, or is there a way that it's affected how you evaluate that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, as an assistant coach nowadays, you have to make sure you have a room that has depth and that has production. Now, what does that look like? Well, it used to be, like you said, how many guys did you bring in the recruiting class? Now that's a little bit different. One, did you retain the guys that you recruited or were in the program the year before? Two, did you have to, look into the portal to upgrade your room? How did you create depth with the resources that you provided? And, that may be, you can't just sign all first rounders, like in the NFL draft. You have a first round draft pick, you have a second round draft pick, you have a third round draft pick. Well, it's the same way in recruiting now. You have to, build a room accordingly, and that's the job of the assistant coaches to do that, and the position coach to make sure he's got depth. And you want to bring in guys that you can develop, because that's a big part of our culture. But sometimes you got to fill in holes, and that's each guy's job. So while it was a little bit easier to identify probably a few years ago when you were just looking at who they brought in the high school class, I think it's changing a little bit that way.
Spencer Holbrook, let him enroll.
Brian, the last time you guys faced a passing offense like this Indiana one, you guys had some struggles against Oregon. How confident are you that you guys have made the proper corrections, that you're ready for a challenge like this?
Yeah, I think our guys have done a great job of identifying the things that early in the season we need to do a better job at, and so this will be a great challenge for them and a great test to see where we're at. I think our guys are excited to play in this game. It's a very good challenge. They have a very good team. They have good talent at the receiver position, and so I know our guys are excited for the challenge, and I think you've seen improvement in different areas, but again, this will be a great test for them.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Brian, I think that touchdown Northwestern scored was just the second touchdown you guys given up since the Oregon game. I know Jim, after losses or even after big games, always says he has to be better teacher for the guys. In your time with him, what have you seen, or how can you explain who Jim is as a teacher, so that when you get into games like Northwestern or even Purdue, when you have to experiment with Jack, guys are prepared to play?
Yeah, I think we all have ownership of what goes on, and that's all of our job, to take accountability. I think when it goes the other way, you start to point fingers, then that's not very good for the culture of the team. But we all have to do that, and we have to be honest with ourselves. And even after wins like we've had the last couple of weeks, the issues are still there. We say it all the time, and being honest with each other, like, is that championship level play? And if so, enhance it. If not, you got to get it fixed. And a big part of that is teaching, like we're talking about. I mean, that's what we are as coaches. We're teachers, and the test is really the game on Saturday. And do you grade out a champion or not a grade out a champion? If you didn't grade out a champion, you got to figure out what happened, what went wrong. Where along the line did your teaching go wrong? Was it what you asked them to do? Was it the way that you trained them? And so I think that's all coaches look at it that way. But when you're a coordinator and you're putting it all together, you're ultimately responsible.
Andrew Gillis, Cleveland.com.
Brian, obviously the next 2 weeks and maybe 3 are obviously very important for you on the field, but National Signing Day is in 2 weeks. So how are you guys kind of planning on juggling that as a staff, where it's the most important part of the season for you guys on the field? You also have to kind of deal with the circus that it is off the field.
Yeah, that's end of November, early December, this time of year. It's been like this now for a few years, a little bit different, I guess, with things getting moved up, but it's just kind of what it is, and you got to recruit every day, but you also have a game you got to go win. And so it's multitasking at the highest level, but we got great people in the building here that help with all of that and help with the communication.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
When Will decided to come here, one of the biggest reasons that he decided to come here was because he wanted to develop into a top first, second round draft pick. When you looked at him when he got here in January as to where he is now, where has he taken the biggest step in that regard to being a better NFL prospect?
I think the first thing is he's got a command on how we're trying to run our offense. I think he's got a good handle on protection, the run game. But I also think, he's seeing the route structures and how we do things and progressions better. I think his footwork is timing up better with the routes. I think he's got a good handle on our receivers. He's learning, more and more about third down, red zone, 2-minute. And that's really how you win games as a quarterback, as you start to continue to get higher levels of football. So a big part of it is his preparation. Not that he didn't do that where he was before, but you just see it growing each week.
Bill Landis, Kings of the North, and the podcast.
Right, I think Emeka had 12 touches when you guys played Oregon, and I think he's had 12 in the 4 games since then. Are teams doing anything to make it more difficult to get him the ball? Is it ever in your mind as the game is happening, like, hey, we have to make sure Emeka's getting his hands on the ball?
I think one of the things from this year, when you just look at the number of plays we've had, and then when you look at the number of possessions we've had, they're down, and that's because we're huddling and going a little bit slower on offense for a lot of different reasons. But when you also have a game where the end of the game is kind of getting a little bit run into the ground, and those guys aren't playing the last couple of possessions, that adds up too. So I think that plays into it. And I shared this with our team, and I probably shared this with you guys. Down the stretch with our guys, and we have a lot of really good players who want the ball in their hands. But a big part of this team here wants to win, and so we all have to be willing to sacrifice, and we have to be unselfish because we've had guys who have won awards before and had number one this, number one that, but ultimately like this team wants to win, and they have one mindset. So to me, it's not about touches, and the guys have been great about that. I think Emeka's been a great example. I think both running backs have been a great example of that. It's like I just want to do whatever I can to win the game, and those awards will come over time with a body of work. But there are going to be games where you're going to look at this, the stat sheet and not see as gaudy of numbers as maybe we've had in the past. But that's also because of the tempo, how we're running the offense now.
I guess along those lines, I remember last year at Notre Dame, Emeka has a huge game for you guys. Touched the ball a lot against Oregon. He scored against Penn State this year. He does, regardless of how the season's flowing, he seems to have moments when you guys play big games. And I'm not asking you to divulge game plan here, but how much is it on the top of your mind when you're preparing for a game like this? Like, who are your guys that have showed you already that you can count on them in these situations?
Yeah, we try to have a balanced attack going into every game. We try not to just focus on one player or one personnel grouping or one formation. We try to spread the ball around. Now, the coverage will dictate where the ball goes, but where we put the pieces, and I think Brian's always done a great job of that, and Chip is a big part of that as well. As where is everybody at? The ball's not just going here. It's not just going to the receiver. It's not just going to the tight ends. It's not just going to the running backs. We try to move that thing around and not just focus on one guy. We try to spread it around, and then the game is going to go where it goes. But I think our guys deserve that. I think all of our receivers who play deserve the ball. They work on the perimeter in terms of blocking. They're very productive, and it's the same thing with the tight ends and the running backs. So. I think that also puts the most amount of stress on the defense when you have to defend everybody.
Don Taberry, WBNS.
Coach, I don't know how many of us would have predicted a top 5 matchup with Indiana being 10-0. When you look at them, and this is a team that was 3-9 a year ago, what jumps out as you look at this football team?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that I don't think their players get enough credit. I think that, coaches have done a great job, and they've done a nice job this year. But the players are the ones who play, and they have good players, and they've done a nice job of changing their roster or upgrading their roster in certain areas. I think they play very hard. They are well coached. They take care of the football. They cause turnovers. They play well in special teams, and their best players play on special teams. For instance, their top running back is back there as a protector in the punt, and which does a lot of things. Like it shows that special teams are important to them, but it also makes you be aware that, hey, there's a running back there when you're punting. So I think there's a lot of things they've done, but you can see that they've been very successful in everything they've been looking to do in terms of installing a culture, in all 3 phases, and so it's going to be a great challenge for our team. We're looking forward to it.
Very confident. He has said some things, collision course with greatness and all this, said some things. Do you pay any attention to any of that stuff that's been said?
Well, everybody has to motivate their team, and certainly when you feel like you have good players, then it certainly gives you confidence, and I think he's done a great job of instilling that. But ultimately, this is always about us, in our preparation. Every week. We try to keep the same routine and focus on us. Now, you got to know your opponent. It's very, very important to know their tendencies and what they do. But in order to be consistent week in and week out, you got to keep the same routine. And that's about our routine. That's about our focus and what we need to do and all the different, core values that we believe in terms of winning games. And that'll be the same this week.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, not every game, but you guys have had times where maybe the offense starts slow, defense starts slow. I think you could say Saturday was a little bit of both. When you have looked back at some of those slow starts on either side of the ball, do you see any common connections or things that have been pointed out to try and get those faster starts, which obviously going forward you'll need?
I think we all have the same expectation that, every time we touch the ball, we're going to go right down and score, and every time the defense goes out there, we're getting 3 and outs. But the truth is that we play against good teams, and they have good players, and they're going to move the ball every now and again and convert on some third downs and get some stops on defense. So, that's part of the game, but we're always looking to do better in terms of our execution. If there's some different things to get thrown out at us, we have to adapt to those things and identify how teams are coming at us. But I see us, right from the jump playing hard. I see us playing physical. I see us playing with an edge, and that's got to continue this week. That's got to carry over into these big games at the end of November. But I think you're used to probably seeing more, like in the past years, again, more possessions. You're just not seeing that. So sometimes those quarters drag on a little bit, or maybe seem to go fast. I don't know how you look at it, but you look at the end of the first quarter and there's only been a couple possessions. You're like, wow, that was a fast quarter. Well, we got to get off the field on third down on defense. But when you get to stop there on the fumble, you're doing your job. So at the end of the day, it comes down to efficiency. And it comes down to a high level of execution when you're not getting as many possessions, and that's what we got to do.
Do you expect, as you get into postseason, that maybe teams will speed up a little bit as they try to not, take the ball from you guys as much as possible? It'll look more like a game we're more used to.
I can see that, yeah. I think it just depends on the team, depends on the matchup, depends on what the other team's looking to do. But I think everyone's going to do whatever they possibly can to win the game, whatever they think that's best, and we have to be able to win any type of those games. But ultimately, it comes down to us, and whether we're getting off the field on third down and keeping the drives going on offense and scoring touchdowns in the red area.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Obviously, when you're evaluating guys as recruits, learn as much as you can about that. Then once he gets into your program, there's maybe things that you couldn't have learned then that you know now. With Caleb, what did you think of him as a recruit? And then what's the thing that he has maybe shown you guys over the last 11 months that even when you guys were evaluating him coming out of high school, you had no idea that he was this?
With Caleb in the recruiting process, you could tell at a young age, he just really loved football. And when you talked football, he was listening, and you better know what you're talking about when you get around him. That's the first thing you realize. And he comes from a football family. His brother, his dad, even mom. They know football now. So that's the first thing. And then you recognize the competitiveness. You saw it in high school. You see it now. He wants to always be involved in the games. It doesn't matter what the score is. He's bugging me about getting back in the game. Doesn't matter what the score is. Give me a shot. Give me one more series. That's just the way he's built. And it's contagious. And his energy, his passion for the game, I think, really carries over to the rest of the guys on the team. And it's infectious.
IQ that he has. You see it a lot of times with quarterbacks, right? Like I think CJ was like this, where he could recount all types of stuff. Can you teach that, or is that something that is just kind of an innate trait that a kid has at his age?
And it's a lot of times it's innate. The more reps you get, guys can start to get a feel for it more and more. But there's just certain things that guys have. They can see things before it happened, and that's the whole idea of anticipating as opposed to reacting. And the more preparation that you do, the more you can anticipate. He does a lot of work. He's here early in the morning. He's here late at night. He's watching film. He's getting extra work whenever he possibly can on the field. And because of that, this is what happens. And this is not just somebody who shows up right before meetings start and goes home when the whistle blows. He's here. He's working. And that leads to that. So, there are some natural instincts there, but then there's also the hard work that gets put in behind the scenes. It doesn't just, happen. So I think it's a great example for the rest of our players and for our younger players to see somebody who puts in that type of work.
Dan Holt, 11 Warriors.
Indiana's done a good job of, putting pressure on opponents this year up front on their defense. Do you feel like this offensive line, the chemistry you've been able to build the last few weeks, is where it needs to be ready for this challenge?
Yeah, this is going to be a great challenge for the offensive line. I know they're excited about it. It's a very good and productive, and they've like you said, put up a lot of numbers and done a great job. They're moving every snap. They're penetrating, and they do a nice job with it. So I think our guys are excited about the challenge, and the game's going to be one up front.
It seems like Donovan's gotten more and more comfortable each week at left tackle. How does that maybe kind of help you guys in terms of being able to game plan now that he's got a few games under his belt there?
Yeah, you know what to expect. I think going into the Penn State game, you weren't too sure because you hadn't done it much. Now, at least you have a body of work to work off of. So you know what you're getting right there. And the more he plays it, the more comfortable he's getting.
Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
How much time is spent with Will talking about what he might see that you guys haven't seen from Indiana at all this year? With the week off that you have?
Yeah. You know, you try to do things that, you know, he knows well, but then also have some change-ups. And, you know, I think for him, you know, he's got some experience under his belt. He's seen a lot of different things. So if there's things that come up, you know, we'll make adjustments as time goes on. But the good news for him is, you know, he's played a lot of football. This isn't his first, you know, big game that he's been in.
So how much would that change if you're talking with a sophomore rather than a fifth-year guy?
Yeah. Yeah, that's significant. Yeah, it is. Yeah, because you just don't have those banked reps in your mind. You haven't been through it before. And, you know, have you ever done this before? Yes. Okay, hey, we're going to do this. Have you ever done this before? No. All right, well, it's going to take a lot of work during a week, and you only have a few days to get ready. So, you know, that plays into the game planning part of it, I would say.
Steve Hillwagon, 24/7 Sports.
Hey, Coach. Curtis Rourke came from Ohio University, and he was a really good run-pass guy at OU. He had over 800 yards rushing in his career, and this year he's netted 17. Now, they played a lot of blowout games. He hasn't had to run the ball, kind of like your quarterbacks in the blowouts, you don't run them. Is that a wrinkle that in a matchup game that you guys are preparing for, that he's got that in his repertoire?
Sure.
Is that something that is involved in preparing for him, and just what do you see with him?
Yeah, no, he's played good football this year, and yeah, he has, you know, athleticism and can, you know, make guys miss and run, and you've seen him, like, obviously the numbers that he had leading into the season. So, you know, we got to make sure we're playing it honest. But I think he's, you know, played good football this year. The numbers speak for themselves, and he's very accurate in what he does, and he knows what he's doing. He's played a lot of football, so he's an experienced guy. So, again, great challenge for our team.
Pro Football Focus had Lathan Ransom as the number 2 rated safety for however their grades go in the country. I don't know what you guys have him at. Probably pretty high. Seems like he's played pretty well. But just your thoughts about him. And, I mean, is it outlandish to think that you have both of the first-team safeties in the Big Ten with Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs? I mean, it seems like they both had a pretty good year.
Well, the first thing I'll say about Lathan and Caleb is they both bring a lot of energy to the table, and they're leaders. And you know, again, energy is contagious. Execution fuels emotion, and they're executing well too. So you know, they need to have great games in this game. Our best players have to play well. I mean, that's just the way it goes when you're in these types of games. And you know, I think, you know, Lathan, you know, has played a lot of football here. You're seeing some of the best play right now. He's physical. He prepares. He cares a lot about his teammates. He cares a lot about Ohio State. He came back to win, and I'm glad he's a Buckeye.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Both you and Indiana. I mean, Indiana's really rebuilt their team with transfers. You've supplemented the roster with, and all your top 4 guys are really hit the jackpot with. How important has that been, obviously, but more importantly, what's the challenge of fitting those kind of guys into your culture? Because that's probably the key, right?
Yeah, I think what's unique about this situation is that, you know, Coach Ignetti came over from James Madison and brought a core with him. So there was already a group of guys that knew the culture, and then he, you know, integrated it with those guys, had some success early, and then it's just kind of grown from there. And I think that's a winning recipe, you know. I think when you come in, you know, without having guys who know, you know, your culture, that's a little bit of a different approach. And, you know, for us, you know, we want to make sure we're retaining as much of the roster as possible on a yearly basis, knowing that that's not possible to do everybody, but to keep the culture alive and to make sure we're recruiting the right people for our program. But, you know, every program has their own philosophies in a different situation and has to respond appropriately. But at the end of the day, it's about, you know, having a team who believes in, you know, what you're trying to get done as a program, and then, you know, also wants to play for each other. You know, that's the thing about this team here. Like, you know, they're not worried about individual accolades or anything like this, especially late in the season. Like, they're focused on winning, and they want to play for each other. And when you have that, you have a chance.
And I'll maybe ask you to state the obvious, but just how crucial have those 4 guys been to the success this year?
Yeah, they've been a big part. You know, not only just the production but the leadership. And I think they've also just been respectful of the culture, respectful of the program, and the fact that they didn't just come in and just start, barking at everybody. They earned the respect of their teammates, and then really fell into it. Now, when you look at Seth and Will, they're both playing leadership positions, and so that naturally happened. But they've been excellent in those areas.
Austin Ward, podcast.
Ryan, I can't remember a time that Denzel has ever been lacking in self-confidence, but the last few weeks, and maybe dating back to Oregon, just he looks frustrated. Even the throw on the sideline that he gave up on Saturday, just like after the play, just he looks frustrated. Are you sensing that from him? What is the confidence level he's working with right now?
Yeah, I think he's going to have a great game this weekend. I think he's going to have a great week of preparation. Had a great conversation with him the other day, and he's excited about playing in this game. And they completed that one on the other day, but he knows he's got to play his best in big games. And I think he's going to have a great week of practice, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play on Saturday.
You mentioned earlier just like the challenge for the pass defense and what Indiana's bringing. The last 4 games since Oregon, what have you guys thought about the evaluation for Denzel and Davison?
Yeah, I think there's been really good, aggressive. There's been other things that we got to get better at, just like everybody else. But we know we're going to get challenged out there. I mean, that's just the way it is. Especially now and in this game, they're going to challenge us on the perimeter. That's just the way it works. So, our guys got to learn from things that have gone on in the past and make those adjustments. And I know Tim and Matt and all those guys are working hard in the back end to make sure that we're giving them the best chance to do that. But the bottom line is, this coaching staff and all of us believe in those guys. We love their competitiveness. We love who they are. They're team players, and excited to see their week of work and excited to see them play on Saturday.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
You guys have faced good receivers before this year in Oregon. Just wondering how this group of Indiana guys, their pass catchers, it seems like they got a lot of guys who've been able to score. Just the depth and the overall, I think they've got like 4 or 5 guys who've had multiple touchdowns this year. What makes them a good receiving corps?
Yeah, they're very productive. They made a lot of plays this year, and look like they run really good routes and have good ball skills. And so we've played good receivers before, but these guys are just on par with those guys. And so again, we got to get to work this week and make sure that we have a great week of preparation so that our guys know what it's going to feel like on Saturday. But the combination of the route running, the throwing, the catching, and the way that the quarterback and the receivers work has been very productive up into this year. So again, big for our guys this week.
Mr. Melton was on the unavailable list last week. Just what's his status?
Yeah, he's going to practice today, and we'll kind of monitor as the week goes on.
We'll wrap things up. Tim May, Letterman Row.
Yeah, Ryan, how simple does it make it from a motivation standpoint? By the way, thanks, Jerry. How simple does it make from a motivation standpoint to face your team like yesterday and go, we win, we're in, winning takes care of everything? I mean, how simple does it make it in that aspect here in this last three games you want to play in the conference, including the championship game?
Well, it's been like that, really since after the Oregon game. That hasn't changed. You lose any one of those games, then you're out. So that's not changed. We've always monitor, after the game's over, Saturday night, Sunday morning, what's going on across the conference. We saw, Indiana is becoming a big game. It's now a top 5 matchup. So, yeah, our guys are fired up for this one and know that this is a must-win for us. We got to go win this game to go play in Indianapolis. And I know the team, the coaches, everybody in this building, the fans know what kind of a game this is, and we got to bring it on Saturday.
And the other thing, just 2 quickies. Number one, when you see a Dave Adolph make a play like he did, it's not just the 5-star guys, about this team. I mean, what is it that you really like about the makeup of this team from the standpoint of the guys you brought in, the guys who are have been rising through the ranks, et cetera? Do you feel like you've got that, like, just that cohesion you want at this point in the season?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about, when Byrne was asking the question about your room. Yeah. There's a guy right here who, is on a roster, and he's making a difference on special teams. We need those types of guys, on the team. And, how much he gets to play at receiver, we'll see as his career goes on, but he's making a difference on special teams. That's a big deal. You think about where Xavier Johnson was in his career. He made a name for himself on special teams, then became a big player. Those guys, can make or break your team as the season goes on, and they're very critical. So, a lot of guys will talk about, the Jeremiah Smiths and the Carnell Tates, but it's these other guys that are also having a huge impact on these games.
Yeah. And let's think, do you feel like you have, for want of another term, 3 primary receivers right now, like a lot of people thought you might have in this season, meaning Carnell, Jeremiah, and Emeka? And how does that, I don't know, enhance your game planning, so to speak, to know that they've got to prepare for 3 guys? Because, you grew up, you had a primary receiver, I'm sure, at New Hampshire.
Oh,
you understand what I'm saying? But,
Yeah, we
they've
didn't have
all
these 3, I can tell you that.
contributed
Yeah, we didn't have these 3. Yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference when it's very difficult to just double or say we're going to take this guy away when you have other guys on the other side of the ball who can do what they can do. So and then again you have your tight ends, and I thought the throw and catch to G. Scott in the game, he was lined up on a Mike linebacker there, or I think it was the Will linebacker. They were doubling outside on Carnell. And so, you're one-on-one with the linebacker going down the middle of the field. And so the throw and catch there was excellent. But that's what we're talking about, the matchup there. Or when you look at the Purdue game, they had a linebacker matched up on Travion because, the safety took away Emeka. So, all those things are important when you're trying to attack a defense. Yeah.